Get over it. It's over.
Mm.
This is your new life. You ain't anybody special because you're not the only person in the world that got divorced. I said to her, I'm done having kids. Just take the whole breast. I don't even need you to take the lump out. She goes, okay, relax. No, no, I don't need you. My priority is to fix these children. Going through a miscarriage was it was horrendous. I finally called dad. He didn't even ask what happened. He said, come home.
Hello, my handsome friends, and welcome to Humble the Poet Daily-ish, my daily-ish podcast hosted by your boy, Humble the Poet. This podcast is for anybody just trying to make life a little bit lighter. Lifelong learners, people who just want to continue learning, people who want to continue growing, and people who want to build a community of the same. Uh, my guest today, my very first guest, my very first podcast episode has been blessed with my sister, Gurbir, and I call her Gurby. Uh, Work-wise, she's a consultant. She's consulted for a lot of really big companies, and she's also started her own company, the Malta Group. In addition to that, she's a mother of two. She is a badass in every capacity. She's been through so much, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The theme of my conversations with people is going to be being through the mud. People sharing the bullshit they've gone through and what they've learned from it, what tools they've acquired from it, what wisdom they've gained from it, and really in the hopes that we realize that we're not alone with the shit that we deal with. So that's the goal of this, and who better to have than my sister Gurbir. She's dealt with the loss of a child. She's dealt with health issues related to cancer, work related, losing her job and finding out on the news. She lost her marriage. She's been through a lot, and the thing is, she's ready to talk about it and she's ready to share. And you're going to see in this conversation how precise and wonderful she does that. And in addition to just being a great conversation, I think you're really going to gain a lot of insight as to what I got to grow up with. She's my oldest sister. I have two sisters, and she's the oldest. And with her, the work that she did, the mindset she had, and the rebel that she was, she really paved the way for me to be the weirdo and the creative and the artist that I was, and that I am. So from that standpoint, I really appreciate it from that. Please make sure you share this episode if you enjoy it with somebody that you care about. Either you just copy and paste the link and send it over their way, or show them how to get on podcasts. Not everybody knows how to get on podcasts, so please show them how to get onto podcasts. Anybody you think that's going to enjoy this message. Um, as well, please subscribe either on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or wherever else you're listening to podcasts. Make sure you follow me on there. Please leave a rating. Please leave a review, so I can know how you guys feel about this. And on top of all of that, please let's build this connection on a higher level. Join my community of handsome friends at humblethepoet.com/community. We have our own community. It's just good vibes. It's light. It's fun. And not only will you be able to connect with me, you'll be able to connect with other handsome friends. And I'm really hoping to create a global community of people who actually mess with each other and not just that toxic bullshit of social media. So with that said, without further ado, let's get into this conversation with my sister Gurbir. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, you were the very first guest on the very first episode of this podcast.
Hmm.
So, a quick introduction. My first guest, her name is Gurbir Mahl. Simply put, this is my older sister. There's another sister, but she's not here, and I don't know if I'll ever get to interview her. She's more of an introvert, so I don't
Yeah.
know if we'll ever interview her. But that would be an interesting conversation as well. But Gerby's my oldest. I call her Gerby. We all have nicknames for each other, and they're all just butchered nicknames because when we all had our speech impediments as kids, we just stuck with them. Uh, so Gerby is my oldest sister, um, and the more time I spend with other adults, the more I realize people don't get along with their siblings.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
the other thing I realize as well is people's siblings set the tone for like how they are. So
Hmm.
as much of an artist and as a weirdo as I am, I realize so much of that is heavily influenced by the fact that you normalize like being a rebel in the house. So like,
Thank you.
you're welcome. But it's true. And you never think
Yeah.
about that until you meet other people and you realize their relation, most of them have older siblings that
Hmm.
act as parents, and they
Yeah.
usually act as an extension of the parents. So I'm sure as an older sibling, like the bare basics, look both ways before you cross the road, don't put that random thing in your mouth, stuff like that. I'm sure I won't have memories, but I'm sure on some level you did that parenting for me. But I think when it came to like a lot of the old school village mindsets that a lot of kids of immigrants deal with, and then their older siblings perpetuate, especially if there's an age gap.
Hmm.
Um, you didn't do any of that. If anything, all the memories are you butting heads with mom and dad on that. Because obviously, growing up, I don't realize this is a big deal. Like your reality is your reality, right? So like
Yeah.
sisters fighting with mom and dad, that's what sisters do. Always pushing the rules, always pushing the barriers, always trying to find out how far you can go. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But that's kind of how it goes. And especially, you know, growing up in Punjabi culture, like discipline also included getting your ass beat sometimes. There was less anxiety for me to go against what was expected of me because I was in a house where almost everybody figured out their own stuff and made it their own way. And I think
Yeah.
that's the interesting thing with you and Nub, my other sister, because she also did things her own way. It's just as interesting ideas that sometimes the things that are your own way don't always butt heads with the parents anyways. So she was able to
Yeah.
kind of foster her own life, but it really wasn't something disruptive. But then I was thinking about you, as much of a rebel as you were on paper, you almost, and I think it's also you just recognizing the value of it at the time. You pretty much kind of did what most kids are expected to do. You
Absolutely.
went to
I
university.
absolutely did it. Yeah.
Yeah, you went to university. You got a useful university degree
Hmm.
in more of the hard sciences instead of the soft sciences. You got employed. You found a guy both within the culture, both within the caste, you know, so you ticked off all those boxes. You got married in your mid-20s
Hmm.
and you lived happily ever after.
Yeah. And I had two kids. I had a boy and I had a girl.
Yeah,
Like
and you had the boy first.
I had the boy first. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything was according to my plan. So I say my plan because
Yeah.
I thought it was my plan. And then you realize that there is no plan. It's just what you try to put forth. And when all of that crumbled, I was shocked
Yeah.
because I succeeded in everything I did because I planned it.
Yeah.
I planned it. And I was like, oh, wait, no, 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 this can't happen to me. This happens to other people who don't invest in working on the plan. I have multiple degrees. As you said, I got married, I had kids. I did what you're supposed to do. And the reality shock really came to me in my 30s. I was married for 10 years. I had the best family, and it just didn't work out. The marriage didn't work out.
Yeah.
And that wasn't in my plan. I wasn't emotionally ready for this. And
Yeah.
I always had everything planned, as you know. I
Yeah.
never failed at anything.
Yeah.
And I didn't even once at the beginning realize that it may not have been a failure. It's just a different journey or a different path that was meant to me.
Mm.
Because I never allowed my blinders to ever look at anything else
Yeah.
because I make the plans and I excel at everything I do. And this was not part of my plan. So I epically failed.
So looking back at that now, you definitely made it part of your plan. And whenever I get praised for saying something smart or doing something smart, I still am like, trust me, I'm not the smartest in my house. I'm no one's ever looked at me as like the smart one in the house. It's because you guys set such a high bar. But again, you did like, and again, I wasn't paying attention to your life at that point. So when you made this plan, how much of this plan was you recognizing the value in it? How much of it was you being like, this is what I have to do, I don't have a choice? And how much of it was it like a subconscious, I want to keep mom and dad happy?
So a great question. So I think I realize now that it probably wasn't my plan. I'm not only the oldest in our family, I'm the oldest on our dad's side and all the cousins.
Yeah, because
And
dad's the
every
oldest.
dad's the oldest,
Yeah.
right? So everyone pegged me as the bar to be praised against. I didn't ask for it,
Mm-hmm.
but man, I exceeded on the stuff that everyone liked:
Yeah.
getting married, getting the degrees, getting a good job.
Yeah.
And because I fit that, I think a lot of it was pleasing mom and dad because frankly, I think we had a pretty amazing childhood growing up. Like surprisingly, our parents had their ways about us, but they were pretty okay with us. And it was what I was meant to do. I think I didn't even dare to think that I could do anything else. And I wasn't unhappy about it because
Yeah.
it was on my terms. I found my spouse.
Yeah.
I chose what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I think a lot of it, back to your question, it was absolutely to please mom and dad, but in a good way. Not because I was threatened to do it, but because then I got accolades for it. And I
Yeah.
was a great example. And it made me pride. It made me pride. I had ego in me because I was like, yeah, I'm doing everything right
Hmm.
according to the plan. And it's
Yeah.
my plan.
And it definitely set a template, not even just for us, your younger siblings, but as you said, like every single cousin,
Everybody.
and I get it. Yeah, you're the oldest of the oldest, and that's going to set a tone. And it's not like anybody knew what they're doing. Everybody across the ocean came to this new country, and now how you do it sets the tone. And you
Yeah.
definitely did it. You accomplished it, and on the outside, it looked like it was done with ease. And I do remember like a lot of memories of you studying, like you sitting there studying, and now reflecting out loud, like I never studied ever, and
Yeah.
realizing like you actually put in that work, you did what you had to do, and you're right, and mom and dad shared a lot of the old school beliefs that a lot of people do. They didn't have the iron fist, and I
Yes.
feel like even when there were fences that they created, like boundaries, they were extremely wide, and the
Yeah.
fences were more of those like orange fences that bend more so than like barbed wire. So it's kind of like, as you said, you're like, I found my own partner, but I'm sure subconsciously you're like, but I'm gonna make sure they tick off the
Oh,
boxes.
for sure. Oh,
Not,
yeah.
and it probably wasn't an intense anxiety of disownership or getting beat over or whatever. It was more of like, don't want to let them down. And
Yeah.
a lot of people, and I know a lot of people listening, they have it a little bit more strict, and they're
Yeah.
like, or they've just never had the conversation, and I think that's
Yeah.
a really big thing that we have is when we're young, we have that. When we're young, we're super vulnerable. We have that one moment where we disappoint our mom or our dad, and it feels like the
Yeah.
end of the world, and then that feeling of the end of the world carries with us till we're adults, and we've never revisited being like, oh, had I done that as an adult, I would have laughed it off.
Mm-hmm.
Now as adults, we disappoint mom and dad regularly, and we laugh at it. That, I think that was the big thing I had to explain to other people. It was like, it doesn't result in conflicts. I don't listen to them, but it doesn't result in shouting matches and fights. It
Mm-hmm.
results in them expressing disappointment and us laughing about it, and the overall energy of everything going on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you got married in your mid 20s. If I
I
did the
did
math, around 20,
early 20s, not even mid, early 20s.
early 20s. Yeah, early
Yeah.
20s. And yeah, you did it the way it needed to. It was supposed to be done. Grand
Mm-hmm.
wedding. Married into a family that ticked off the boxes that you needed.
Yeah.
um and then, yeah, I mean, moved into a house, had kids, you know
Yeah.
upgraded lifestyle compared to how we grew up and stuff like that. It didn't go the way that people expected it to go. It didn't go the way you wanted
Mm-hmm.
it to go. And it happened, from my understanding, over a short period of time. It wasn't something that was super super super
Yeah.
slow. Writing was
Yeah.
on the wall. It kind of happened suddenly.
Yeah. Yeah.
um what was that like to go from like, well, life is going one way, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, I'm not gonna say overnight it flipped on you, but very quickly, your reality, what you thought your life was
Mm-hmm.
going to be, was no longer that way. How does
Yeah.
that feel?
So initially you're in denial
Yeah.
because everything is fixable.
Yeah.
And it can't be happening to me.
Yeah.
It happens to other people.
Yeah.
But I made sure, as you said, all my boxes were ticked off. So if all those are ticked off, it can't happen to me.
Yeah.
So I went through a good year, year and a half in denial. In
Mm.
denial, and also I would say I'm an empath. So I really, really just wanted to fix it because I didn't want to showcase myself as being a failure because you guys as my amazing siblings, my parents, our extended family, I was on a pedestal. I truly was.
Yeah.
And I did not want to fail. So I
Yeah.
thought of everyone else. And oh my God, I had two kids. Both were under the age of, like, one was 2, one was 4 at the
Yeah.
end, right?
Yeah.
And then I realized that I can't take it anymore. Um, and the realization came to me after sitting in victim pools. And so after I got divorced, I sat in a beautiful victim pool. And I call it beautiful because everyone gives you attention.
Hmm.
You can get away with whatever you want. And it's comfortable and nothing's expected from you. So I think I went from one end of being highly, performing and doing everything to, oh, this happened to me. And I think I really sat in that victim pool because I really expected people to be disappointed in me, but they weren't. They
Mm,
just gave me, oh, it's okay. You're going to be fine. Our parents were so amazing and supportive, the extended family. So that actually was not a good thing for me because I sat in this victim pool and I'll never forget it. Our sister, she said, listen, this event had happened and I just was completely being self-absorbed and feeling sorry for myself. She was, listen, 50% of the world is divorced. You got 24 hours to get out of this pool because you're no special than anybody else. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no.
he's
You always
stoic
used,
as fuck.
yes. I was like, no, no, but remember, you're always nice to me and everyone treats me
Yeah.
special. And she goes, no, get over it. It's
Mm,
over.
mm,
This is your new life. You ain't anybody special because you're not the only person in the world that got divorced.
yeah.
So I think that for me, after the journey of just feeling so sorry for myself and sitting in this wonderfully warm victim pool was really hard, but I had to do it. I had to do it
Yeah.
for my sanity, right? That journey of me realizing, even from a physical perspective, of shit, this isn't going to work out. This marriage that we've been married for 10 years, I probably dropped easily 25 pounds, but I thought I was hiding it. I
Mm,
thought nobody knew, but everybody knew. And that's the falsity I had in me. And I remember when I finally called, I think it was dad. I finally called dad. He didn't even ask what happened. He said, come home. I'm like, what? He said, just come home. And that really hit me because I realized I wasn't hiding anything. Everybody saw it in me. They saw it in my face. They saw my glow go away. And that was a big realization to me that I have this amazing set of family and friends and I never leveraged them
mm,
ever
mm.
for support. And damn it, if I had just told them when I first started feeling like this,
Well, so why didn't you first? So was it
oh, I
it
don't
was
fail.
the pressure, and so it's a self-imposed.
Yeah,
Do you have a memory?
absolutely.
Do you have a memory of failing and it being so unpleasant from other people's reactions? Or did you just create this reality where it's not even an
No,
option?
I create it.
Yeah.
No one's, I've received nothing but support, but I'm like, I can't fail because
Yeah.
I never fail. Everyone's put me on this, oh, look at Gurbir, you should be like Gurbir. I created this amazing example. I can't screw this up. I can't. And then just for my children, forget even the family. I assumed, and I know this isn't right, that because I lived in a little bubble with blinders, if I get divorced, my kids are going to grow up, they're going to become something they're not supposed to, and they're going to blame it on me.
Yeah.
They're going to blame everything on a divorce.
Yeah.
And that was also not right. So I,
Yeah.
I'll distinctly remember my kids were 2 and 4, and I took them to see a psychologist.
Mm.
And the psychologist said, "Oh, why are you here?" I'm like, I need you to fix my kids." And then she's like, "Oh, your kid. Oh, okay, what's wrong with your kids?" I'm like, "Nothing. But I need you to be proactive so that when they grow up to be teenagers, they don't blame me for the divorce." And she's
Mm.
like, oh, okay. So she did her little assessments and she said, they're actually very healthy and happy. And two healthy, happy homes
Yeah.
are better than one home with a lot of anxiety and a lot of tension. And then she said something to me. She said, what about you? I'm like, what about me? And she goes, how
Mm.
about you come see me? I'm like, oh, I don't, no, no, I don't need you. My priority is to fix these children and get my life in order. So I was just, at that time, I didn't realize I was suffering from high functioning anxiety.
Mm.
So my job was just fix, 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 fix. I didn't have time to sit with a psychologist.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
have to fix everything else around me and
Yeah.
not me, which later you learn that I was going to fail at fixing everything around me until
Yeah.
I fixed this.
It's that
This is
oxygen
me.
mask analogy of like when
Yeah,
you
exactly.
gotta put
Yeah.
your own oxygen. And I think a lot, in addition to people putting everything else before them, they kind of romanticize it. It's like being a
They
martyr,
do.
you know, and
Yeah.
you're like, okay, well, there's no time for me. I gotta do it for
Yeah.
everybody else. But the truth is, if you actually give a shit about everybody else, then you gotta make sure your cup is full. Like
Yeah.
you have to make sure all of this is happening. And I think from that standpoint, that realization, you know, it's super interesting how you go from like, I can't focus on myself. I got to focus on everybody else, realizing that you can focus on yourself. But then it can go too far the other way where
Hmm.
now, you know, the fast food known as self-pity comes in. And now, you know, you're like, wait, I have my guard up. Everyone's going to make me feel like trash. Everyone's going to make me feel like shit for this. You realize, no, I'm around compassionate human beings. And again, props to mom and dad. Like, in order to process what they're trying to process.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because especially in Punjabi community, there
Yeah.
is stigma around
Yeah.
divorce.
Yeah.
And they get a solid A+ for effort.
Solid.
I'm sure they
They
didn't
do.
said stuff that that wasn't always the right timing or the most
Yeah.
tact, but again, nobody's prepared for this. So then you catch yourself going from first avoiding it. I'm sure pulling the trigger on making this lifestyle change was probably delayed for many reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the moment it was probably strongly fed by realizing the implications that this was having on your kids at the
Mm-hmm.
time. So it's probably a little bit easier to do it for them than it was to even do it for yourself.
Yeah.
Then you catch yourself in the as you said, the beautiful pool of self-pity. um and I mean, and again, it wasn't like you shouldn't have had that. You needed support.
Yeah.
You needed to kind of lick your wounds. You needed to rest. This impacted you financially. This impacted you mentally, spiritually, physically, as with losing
Yes.
weight. um and then you can go too far the other way. And then, as you said, Nub, pulls you out of that. How does that feel? It's kind of like swinging on a pendulum right now.
Yeah. I felt like I was hurt. I was like, whoa, no, but you know what I went through
Yeah,
and you know the pain I felt with all the stuff you said, financially, mentally, physically. Don't be mean to me.
yeah,
No, no, no. I've already gone through enough hurt.
yeah,
And what I didn't realize was that if all of you continued to enable me, I would have never gotten back up and stood up
yeah,
because, as you said, it was so comfortable being there.
yeah.
And we've seen it with other family members
Mm-hmm.
who haven't come out of their victim pools or their sympathy pools. And it's a horrific life they're living. It truly is.
Yeah,
And then you realize, okay, not to minimize it, yeah, I got divorced. Okay. Other people go through so much, not to compare, but if they can get out of it, I can get out of it. I'm educated. I have the support of my family. I have living in a first world country. What are my excuses?
mm,
And I was still fairly young. I was in my early 30s.
yeah,
And then I really I made the pledge to just hustle and try to do as much as I can do. And a part of that really included getting help, which was very terrifying because I've never been to a professional to get help
yeah.
because I never ever thought of
Did you go to
myself.
anybody for help before that?
No,
Yeah. So not even a professional. You just didn't go to even asking for help in general.
never,
Yeah.
never, never confided in you guys, never confided, obviously, in mom and dad.
Yeah.
I had a great set of friends who I did confide in, but never told them the whole story
Mm-hmm.
because I really believed it tied to whom I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that if I shared who I really was, the love I'd get from all of you people would be almost like, shit, she lied to us, or she's not truly who she is. And I really should have trusted my relationships a lot more. I
Yeah.
really should have given them a lot more weight than I did.
Yeah,
Than
completely.
I
And I
did.
think I think you brought up a good point with that, where you said like everything was one way, and now all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's another way, and this might disqualify me from all the love that I've been
Yeah.
receiving, as if the love was conditional. And I think we all fall
Yes.
for that. That it's such a flawed logic, because when we think about people we love, anybody, whether it's a sibling, a partner, a parent, we could literally write a book on all their flaws.
Yeah.
None of their flaws are hidden from us. None of their imperfections are masked for us to, but the love is so genuine, and it's really love. To love someone is to love them despite all of these
Yeah.
things. It's not to
Yeah.
love them because they don't have them. And there's very little push that we do for the people we actually love to do all of this. But when it goes back to us, there's these big ideas that we have to be enough to be loved,
Always.
even loving
And
ourselves and
yeah.
having other people love us. So I think that's a really interesting thing to kind of think about, because especially when there is something to be said about us wanting to be right more
Yeah.
than wanting to be happy. And if it's like, yo, my brand, and this is interesting because we're talking about a time before social media. My brand in my life is the person who doesn't fail,
Yeah.
the template that everyone's measuring their kids against. And
Yeah.
everyone has that light, like, oh my God, Gurbir's so perfect, so now we got to do it. And I'm
Yeah.
hearing cousins say, well, Gurbir went to university, now we got to go to
Yeah.
university. And it was kind of that. And I didn't go to the same university as you and Nov. And I got comments just not following your guys' path, because it was kind of like,
Yeah.
the parents, and I think a lot of the parents kind of outsource that onto you. Like, hey, we know how to come here, we know how to work, and we know how to make money. We don't know how to excel in this world. Luckily, we have this competent, intelligent daughter who's figuring it out, and she's figuring it out super well. And then now she's just a template. Everyone just be like her.
Yeah.
If
The
they do
cookie
what she
cutter.
does,
It's
yeah, cookie
easy. It's a
cutter,
cookie
yeah.
cutter approach. But back to that conditional love, also, I think a big reason why I didn't share is the ultimate love is a marriage.
Mm,
And to me, in my brain, that failed. If that love can fail, how do I know any other love is going to stay with me?
mm,
Was my brain at the time.
yeah,
Again, a peanut butter approach that if one failed, which was a really big one in my life,
yeah,
how is anything else going to ever last? And that's one of my biggest regrets is not really leveraging my relationships because, as you know, we have a really epic family support system.
yeah.
With you, Nav, Manjinder, I honestly don't consider you guys siblings. I consider you guys my friends and my thought partners because we don't necessarily act as siblings, not in a bad way, but and a lot of people have told me that. They're like, you don't act with your siblings like siblings do. And I'm like, yeah, because I don't see them as siblings, but I see them as pretty amazing humans that I need to leverage for the good, bad, and the ugly.
Mm,
And I sincerely mean that, right? Like I don't know what's going on in your life at any time, but I know if I need you, if
mhm.
my kids need you, you'll be there in a heartbeat, right? And that's what
Yeah,
matters.
completely. And it was this moment that made you kind of realize that. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things. And again, not everyone's going to have amazing siblings, not everyone's going to have amazing parents or understanding stuff
Yeah.
like that. But everybody listening, I hope there's at least one wonderful relationship that's not, and our brains by default are always going to focus on what's going wrong instead of what's going right. So
Hmm.
there is that friend who doesn't hold it against you for not calling.
Yeah.
There is that friend that you don't always keep track with. And I know for me, after losing my friend Boomerang, that's when I started putting friends in the calendar and being like, yo, okay, fine. I don't have to remember now. Google will let me know at least
Yeah.
every 2 months, call so and so, hit them up, send them a quick message on WhatsApp, just to check in, because you're right. Like, there's nothing more important than the relationships, and it's so easy to focus on what's going wrong, to not be able to, as you said, leverage them for
Yeah.
peace. It's not, leverage often in the business world, kind of means control, power, what have you, but it actually means like, what you can do to a lever.
Yeah.
When you create a lever, you can hold more weight. And
Absolutely.
none of us have ever accomplished anything alone. Like, even your accomplishment still became because we had parents that fed us, gave
Yeah.
us some level of structure, live in a country that is safe, didn't have to worry about bombs dropping on our heads while we're in school. So I think that's a really interesting thing. And I know now, even when I think about the family dynamic, especially the extended family, because that's the other thing I get to brag about to my friends. I'm like, I don't have beef with my siblings. I don't
Yeah.
have beef with any of my cousins at all.
Yeah.
Like, I don't butt heads with these guys. Even our Trump supporting cousins, I had them over for the elections, and
Oh boy. Yeah.
even then, I don't butt
Yeah.
heads with them. I don't argue
No.
with them. We have fun. We had a fun night that night.
Yeah.
It's everything's okay with that. But that's also because of you, because you're the active one. Like, you're the one remembering all the cousins' kids' birthdays, all the anniversaries, pushing all of that in the different family groups, organizing that.
Yeah.
Is that an active thing you did now that you realize how important all these relationships are?
I would say absolutely. I think you realize, especially as we get older, even in the simple act of a birthday or an anniversary, we can buy ourselves whatever we want. We don't need
Yeah,
anybody else to buy us stuff, right?
yeah,
But what really matters is just seeing family and being connected with them. And all of us are growing. And now we have this amazing third generation
yeah,
who's now up and coming, and everyone's just got such amazing personalities that are funny. They're Trump supporters, they're whatever, but it's just good to hang out with them. And when you say, do you plan all this, we what, maybe get together once a year with the parents on the dad, like the dad side, the mom side, but it makes a difference, I think, just to have even that much connection
yeah,
and hug and get to know people and just make sure everyone's okay.
yeah.
It's
I mean, like, in the summer, one of our cousins, um, Baljeet, stayed over, and we partied, and he crashed over.
yeah.
And then I was like, "How are you getting home?" And he's like, "Yo, my mom's coming to pick me up." And it reminded me of when we were like 4 years old and he slept over. He begged to sleep over. Then as soon
Yeah.
as his mom leaves, he starts crying because he doesn't
For
want
his
to stay
mom.
over. Then his
Yeah.
mom picks him up. And now,
Yeah.
you know, we were celebrating. He had just, you know, it was like 3 days before his baby was going to be born. So,
Yeah.
you know, and he had, you know, we went a little bit hard and he was struggling. And I just thought it was the most adorable thing. I was like, this is just full
Yeah.
circle. Like you're sleeping over at my place. Now your mom's got to pick you up because you don't know how to get home. And it's just really awesome to be like, yo, over all these years, that can still happen.
Yeah.
And again, that's not common for a lot of people to even to go
No.
that far. And I think there's just something good to be said about even you making the efforts of just keeping people connected, keeping people up to date on stuff, encouraging whatever, you know, even with the pandemic, you know, having our secret Santas or our game nights and stuff like that. I think that's really cool. Um, Beyond going through a divorce, so I mean, this happened a while back.
Yeah.
You know, spoiler alert, you know, your kids are both teenagers now and they're great. They have personalities, but as well, like
Yeah.
even on paper, you know, they're doing really well. Your son's, you know, getting a lot of attention for athletics, but he's also a
Yeah.
straight A student. Your daughter, she plays sports as well. She's super
Yeah.
sweet, super kind. And in addition to you saying you not treating your siblings like siblings, I can also imagine when if people came in a room and saw you with your two kids as well as Nuv's two kids, they wouldn't know whose kids are who.
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
you guys definitely have, and you know, you guys have some geography. You guys live pretty close to each other, so you know you can't even tell whose kids are who because you guys have that great relationship. Um, and it's interesting that that came from kind of going through this trouble, and that kind of brings me to, and again, this is up to you if you want to talk about it. I know even in your attempts to have kids, everything didn't go
Yeah.
the way you planned. So if you're down
Yeah.
to talk about that.
So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had my son. He was a year and a half, and we found out we were pregnant again, which was amazing. And unfortunately, that pregnancy was not one that was to full term. So I had a miscarriage. And it was probably one of the hardest things I've been through, losing a child that you, and I'm sure the women that are mothers or that are listening to this or plan to have babies, you don't know. Someone said to me, you don't know what love is until you have a child. And I'm like, oh, whatever. What does that mean? It's truly an animalistic love. It's
Mm,
something that you can't replicate with a partner or a family member. And going through a miscarriage was just, it was horrendous. It was a lot of guilt of, did I do everything right?
mm,
Did I not take care of myself? What could I have done different? And then I find this is where, again, help makes a big difference, whether it's for the mental or the physical. I was in the emergency room and it was apparent that it was going, not, the baby wasn't going to survive. And the doctor said, listen, your fetuses and your body knows when something's not viable and it does a self kind of, it gets rid of it itself.
mm,
This fetus was not meant to live.
mm,
So it was a very scientific answer,
mm,
but she was saying it's nothing that you could have done.
mm,
But it really, it knocks you in the stomach. It really takes a lot out of you because you think, what if? What would this child be doing now?
mm,
What would this child be doing? Would it be a boy? Would it be a girl? Would I have had my daughter if I had had this child, right?
mm,
So it's something that was yeah, it was really really hard to get over, but then, you know, I was blessed. I was pregnant again and had our daughter, so it was something that's always in your heart.
mm,
And then you think about just what can you learn from these experiences, and it's just, it sucked, but you got to
yeah.
try again. It absolutely sucked, but you got to try again.
Yeah,
Not
there's like no
necessarily,
way to put words around it to make it sound nice or whatever it
no,
is.
it just sucked.
Okay.
It
And
sucked. Yeah.
I know when you told me that, I think that was the first time I learned this idea of like you got to wait 3 months before you tell people you're pregnant
Yeah.
because I don't know what the stats are, but
Yeah.
this is a common thing that
Yeah.
babies can be lost in those first 3 months.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if you didn't tell everybody, but I know you told me, and I remember exactly where it was when you told me. And it was something about, you know, trying to process that idea because obviously the moment you hear someone's pregnant and and going back to the first, like, you know, your son was the first, you know, nephew,
Yeah.
and like, you know, to hear another one's come in and that this is at this point as well where like, you know, none of them, she didn't have kids yet. Um, it was interesting that you brought up this idea of like you got to a place where you were blaming yourself.
Hmm.
What can I do right? What can I do wrong? And I know the science behind that, there's a value in it where we replay things that didn't go our way because this is how we process and learn to
Yeah.
not do it again. But at the same time, like it kind of haunts us because the
Yeah.
coulda, woulda, shoulda seem to be endless. And understanding why it happens doesn't necessarily make it any more pleasant to deal with. Um, I'm sure the words of that doctor probably helped. When she just broke it down, like there was absolutely nothing you could
Hmm.
do. Was there anything else that kind of helped you deal with that story, or do those thoughts still come in every now and then?
I think also I didn't realize, as you just said, how common miscarriages are
Mm,
early on. I didn't realize that. And I think just whenever you're going through something, seeking similarities in other people that are going through it, right?
yeah,
So we all know, and there's groups for people that have certain issues or concerns, whether you're sick or you're battling an addiction, and it really makes a difference because then you're not alone.
mm,
You don't have this like just spotlight on you. It almost opens up, and there's other people that share everything they go through. And I remember after that, we took a vacation. We left my son at home with family and we went and we took a vacation to the Caribbean just to get over this. And my sister gave me a book, and it was the Chicken Soup 4 series. And obviously, it was for people that have had loss, such as miscarriage. And I was sitting on the beach, and the whole week I would just read that book. And I read that book, and it just brought calm to me because, wow, other people are going through it and other people have survived through it. Okay, it's okay. There's power in numbers.
yeah,
And there's power, very much so, what you're doing with your written work in sharing,
yeah,
because then people are like, okay, it's not just me, because it's so easy with anything you're going through to feel like you're the only one suffering.
mm,
And my biggest learning, as I already talked about, was I should have shared earlier with some of the challenges, because chances are there's other people that are suffering in similar ways or are there to help you through it. Because it always seems like the worst, but when you talk to people, they almost bring a calm to your storm.
mm.
Can they solve it? Maybe not, but they bring a calm to your storm.
And there's a lot of value, and this is proven in science too. There's a lot of value to even speaking out these most difficult things, because that also like putting hard emotions and hard ideas and hard feelings into the sunlight, it'll reduce some of its sting. It's not going to make it all
Yeah.
go away, but one of my favorite lines from Jay-Z is, "You can't heal what you don't reveal."
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. You hit it on the head where everybody, when they go through major traumatic moments, they start to by default assume they're the only ones going through it. Even if there's empirical evidence, like there's a million love songs, a million heartbreak songs out there. So obviously you're not the first person to have your heart broken, but that it's an isolating feeling.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about finding a community, whether it's a support group, whether it's friends, whether it's family members, but finding people, and it's interesting because, talking about getting professional help, there's something to be said about credible help when it comes to this. Cause sometimes, if nobody in your circle has gone through a miscarriage,
Yeah.
they may not understand, or if nobody in your circle is struggling with addiction, or if nobody in your circle is struggling with a health condition, you might have to reach out beyond that. And that can be
Yeah.
scary in itself. But I mean, there is something to be said about when you start to share your story out loud. By default, saying it out loud makes you feel better, but also when hearing it from other people, that idea that you're not just alone. So like anybody listening, whatever they're going through, finding that
Hmm.
support system, it's easier now, especially with the internet, because you can search it up.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really important thing. Going back to that as well is because I guess you get the news, you go on vacation, you're reading this book, you're meeting these folks and these people. Um, does that did that do anything, like now looking back, did that change any of your behavior or your actions or how you approach things, your relationship with your son at the time? Did that make any differences at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in addition to what we just spoke about in terms of community, so my community came in the form of a book,
Yeah.
but realizing that life is short
Mm,
and anything can happen. As you know, by nature, I'm a planner. I still am.
Yeah.
But I've really kind of looked at what I plan in a different way where if I want to do something now, I'm going to do it now because you never know when your last breath is.
Yeah.
And just enjoy it. It could be little things like you're saving something for a day. Just enjoy that bottle of wine, enjoy whatever. You're waiting to go on the trip, just go because you don't know when life is going to take its last breath from you, right? So
Mm.
we all get caught up in daily life. I'm the biggest, victim to that. But then you really, really have to pause. Just like the tattoo you have to pause and say, do I really need to clean the house right now, or can I just chill with my amazing children or with my
Mm.
partner and just enjoy it, especially with the year we've all had globally.
Yeah.
Really realize what's important. So just pause and plan to enjoy. And that's what I really try to do now.
Yeah.
And I've also learned that you pray for the best, but you plan for the worst, which
Mm.
isn't a negative thing. But that enables you, if you know your journey in life is going to have ups and downs, as long as you're aware of that, it's actually easier when it hits you, if that makes any sense. Whereas before I thought, okay, I'm going to check all these boxes and then I'm going to live a happily ever after. I didn't realize, and you speak a lot about this in your work, that life isn't a happily ever after. It's a journey.
Yeah.
Shit is always going to come around. But now I'm like, okay, now I'm ready. Now I'm going to be braced. Bring it on because I
Yeah.
got you. I'm going to get you. Just that mental shift, which doesn't work all the time, but okay, stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
Job loss, miscarriages, divorce, losing friendships.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Mm.
It's going to be okay, but you have to believe that. And one of the things about getting help, some of the cool things about getting help, first of all, they're confidential. So if I share with you, you love me and you're going to always be biased because of your love for me, a professional actually studied for years for this, and they give you coping techniques that I would have never thought of
Yeah.
and that aren't biased, and they're just there to listen. And you find that you open up more to them because it's a confidential session.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you learn about just serotonin in your brain and how that really impacts you. I didn't know it was biological. Like you
Yeah.
learn a whole bunch of stuff that then makes you go, okay, so it's not all just me. Some of it is just literally chemical imbalances that can be fixed with certain mechanisms that they have as solutions for you.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was huge for me. I didn't know any of this stuff, but when
Mm-hmm.
I got to know and I practiced coping mechanisms, they actually work
Yeah. And
and
sometimes
they
they're
don't
as
get rid of
simple as
stuff.
breathing, actively
Absolutely.
breathing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Breathing and just pausing and being in the moment, which I never practiced any of that stuff, but little things are so they have such a big magnitude to kind of help you through until this phase goes away.
yeah. And two things from what you said. I think the first thing is I think everyone listening already, there has been something dramatic that has happened to you
Yeah.
and you have gotten over it over time. And it's just after enough time goes by, you forget your resiliency and then something new hits you in the gut. It feels worse than that last thing. Just remind yourself of your resiliency. The fact that you're alive right now means you've been through all the shit you've already been through. And that's why we
Yeah.
call this through the mud. It's about going through the mud. And I think the second thing is, and this is the common uh, kind of pushback when people when we bring up professional help. Nobody is lost on the fact that that costs money. Nobody's
Hmm.
lost on the fact that if you're in the UK, it's covered. If you're if you're in Canada, maybe with an employer or something like that, you may be covered. Probably in the States, you're on your own. It's just different setups. However, as time goes by, it's getting more and more evident that this is an essential investment on
Yeah.
some level, and it can't be your homie, and it can't be your Twitter account, and it can't be social media. It's got to be somebody who knows what they're talking about. And I'm not saying it's not expensive,
Yeah.
but maybe even starting with a social worker or starting with just some of the certain apps now, the certain virtual therapy sessions that you can have. Just somebody who doesn't have a stake in the outcome,
Yeah.
somebody who's not because it's challenging. I remember even with your divorce, everybody in the family at one point or another had to question, how will this impact me? And,
Yeah.
it's just it's by default. It's human nature to think like that. But when you work with a professional or somebody who doesn't have a stake in this outcome, they're able to hear it without the emotion, and they're able to
Yeah.
respond instead of reacting. So I know it's expensive, but I know when people have fought with me about this before, I'm like, sell your phone.
Yeah.
Sell your phone and get 10
Yeah.
sessions. Like, this matters. This, like,
It does.
there was a really good comic by an artist, made by Jim Bob, and the comic is a simple picture of a man, or like a creature or a person holding up a whole bunch of weight, and the weight says, financial stress, this, that, your problems, your family, everything. But on the ground, he's standing on ice, and the ice is cracking, and that
Yeah.
says mental health.
Yeah.
Sorry, the bag says everything that you think is important, and then the bottom is mental health. Like, if your mental health goes, like,
Yeah.
your mental and your physical health goes, and nothing else really matters.
Yep.
So I really think just that's something to stress to people listening. Like, I'm not saying professional help is cheap. I'm not trying to speak from a position of privilege, but it's a worthy investment, probably more important than most of the investments we're making in our own life. Um,
Agreed.
having our but wait, there's more moment. Um, when I look at your list of like the bullshit you've gone through, and I don't know if it's bullshit, but you've definitely kind of grown from it. One of the interesting ones was you pretty much got headhunted for a job at Target. You were pulled
Yeah.
from a job that you had, a great job. They somehow found you. They pulled you into Target. You started this job with this company that had just moved into Canada. You were a Kool-Aid drinking Target employee. You loved it. You
Still
know,
am. Still love it.
you still love it.
Still love
Um,
Target.
and then you found out you lost your job from,
Yeah.
I think, our other sister seeing it on the news while you were on your way to work.
Yeah. Um, so Target was a great place to be. From a professional perspective, it was the first time I got to be a leader of leaders, and great culture. I love Target. Everything was perfect. And that morning, I'll never forget, I was on the phone with a friend who had just had a baby. So I didn't have the radio on. And my sister keeps calling and she keeps calling. And I'm like, that's odd. I see her phone number. So I get off the phone with my friend, and my sister's like, where are you? Our sister is like, where are you? And immediately I thought one of the parents passed or something's wrong with one of our kids. And
Mm,
she goes, are you sitting down? Obviously, she's very in tune to the delicate nature that it was right after I had just gotten over my divorce. I was a single
yeah.
mom, great job. And she, okay, I need you to stay calm. I said, okay. And she said to me, Target declared bankruptcy in Canada. I'm like, oh no, 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 they didn't. No, I'm on the leadership. Like I'm a leader there. I would have known as I'm driving. I'm like, no, no, no. She's like, Gurbir, it's all over the radio. So I need you to stay calm. I'm like, again, no, because I would have known because I drink the Target Kool-Aid and they would have told us because I
Yeah.
have a whole team under me. I drive into Target headquarters and all the black executive cars are there from the US. Media is trying to get into have me roll down my window. And it was like a movie. So I'm driving and I'm like, what the? And I'm looking around. I get into the building and one of the key executives was there and he was just crying. So nobody knew. Nobody in Canada knew. And then the shock sits in. I had people under me that were young that literally lived on their own that needed this job. And how do I act as a leader to them when I've also lost my job? And I brought them all into a room. And I've never done this in my professional career. I broke down, shocked them. And I broke down and I'm like, hey, this sucks. It sucks, but we're going to get through this. And it was scary for me because it was the first good thing that happened to me right after my divorce. And it was
Mm,
great. And it was what I needed. And shit, again, what I planned didn't work out.
yeah.
And now I had the weight of all these amazing people that worked for me under me. And how are we ever going to overcome this? And what I'll tell you with this amazing Canadian country we have is the minute our nation found out Target was going under. There were coaches in our parking lot from Sears, Tim Hortons. Executives were interviewing
Wow.
on the spot because they want Hudson's Bay was there. They wanted these folks. So it was a horrible time because I needed that money.
Yeah.
I needed that money. Getting divorced is very expensive. It's more expensive than getting married. Um,
And then
but then
also
again,
just to add to that for context, you also had to like live with our sister for like, I don't know,
I lived with her for 6 months because
yeah,
I
to get
didn't
yourself figured
have,
out. Yeah.
I didn't have, and I had just moved into my own home. And so again, again, Gurbir plans, and the universe has told her many times that your plans never work. The problem when we plan is if we don't get our desired solution as an outcome, we think we've failed.
Hmm.
We don't look around to see that there's tons of other solutions, but
Yes.
we will never consider them because it isn't our solution. So the minute that happened, someone said to me, "Have you decided to maybe be a consultant?" And I'm like, consultant? Consultant work isn't 100% guaranteed. They can let you go at any time. I can't be a consultant.
There's no security and
There's no
stability and
security. And they said, okay, how secure was Target? And I'm like, oof, touche.
yeah,
Okay, I guess I can't
yeah,
say anything. Something that I would have never considered, then my path went into that. And I've never looked back. I've never looked back. So I will say to this day, I love Target. They're an amazing company, even though they're not in our country anymore. But it truly pivoted me to a way where I would have never looked on my own.
yeah.
And my learning with that is it's okay to plan as long as you're open to outcomes that you may have never thought of, and be open to them and be open to the path. I know this is very cliche, that's less traveled, because you never know.
There's always more than one way to address
Yeah.
these, and
Yeah.
it reminds me of a Jesse Reyes who is a
Mhm.
now one of what
Amazing.
amazing singer.
Amazing.
She just does amazing work, and she's from Jane and Finch. Um, it was interesting. So I was at one of her show. I whenever she has a show anywhere, I get to go to those, and she goes, "Don't don't throw away your dream just because you don't recognize it."
Yeah.
And she was talking about, she goes, my dream was to become a music artist and share my songs with the world, and the only thing they were ever offering me was jobs to write other people's music. And she goes, in the beginning I was rejecting it. She's like, that's not what I'm looking for. And then
Mhm.
eventually she realized no. And then that's how she got her foot in that door, where she
Yeah.
wrote amazing songs for other people, and that built this level of credibility that now she's on all over. She's on Eminem's album. She
Yeah.
sang the national anthem on the CN Tower, and and it's
Awesome.
super dope that she tells her fans that at the shows, like, don't deny yourself. And it correlates to your story, because it's like we have these definitions. I remember even when I first got hired as a teacher, the first offer I got was a gym teacher. And I was like, I don't want to be a gym teacher. That's not a real teacher. Later on, realizing it didn't impact your pay, it didn't impact anything. It was just, these vanity titles. And we, going back to like your branding of being the perfect kid or the benchmark for everybody else, we create these rules in our own head about what it means
Yeah.
to be employed, what it means to make some money. And even in my work right now, there's so much vanity metrics. You know what I mean? Where
Mhm.
it's like, you don't get paid from winning an Oscar or winning a Grammy or making the New York Times bestseller list. These are just vanity metrics that may open some doors, but it's really about making yourself feel better, especially after survival is not the priority. And I
Yeah.
love the fact that you losing this job so suddenly, and it's almost, it's like just like ending a relationship, because you had expectations of how this company viewed you and
Yeah.
treated you, and they did a really, and as I said, like, they found you. It wasn't
Yeah.
like you even knew
Yeah.
they were hiring. Like, they found you. It's like getting picked up in a bar. You know
Yeah.
what I
They
mean?
wanted me.
Yeah,
I
they
didn't.
wanted.
They went after me.
Yeah, and then so it's kind of like they make you feel special. They make you feel
Yeah.
like you matter,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, like, you legit got tossed to the side.
Yeah.
And the fact
Yeah.
that there was a resistance to being a consultant at the beginning, because definitely there isn't that safety and security. Just like with my job, there's definitely no safety and security. But the longer you spend on this earth, you start to look at industries and you're like I know teachers who have been laid off. When I became a teacher, it was one of the older teachers that told me that at one point in the 80s, they had laid off 10 years worth of teachers. So you're saying you can be a teacher, which is a government job, for 10 years, and you can still be on the
Yeah.
chopping block. And
Yeah.
that was something a lot of parents don't recognize when they push their kids to be the doctor, lawyer, engineer, is this idea of safety and security. And the real safety and security is having skills to do it on your own, which you can achieve from having jobs. You know, all the different jobs and places you've worked have all provided you with the resume and the experience and the leadership
Yeah.
and the soft skills, which I think are even the more important ones: how to deal with a team, how to manage a team, how to work well with others, how to problem solve. That took you to where you are now, which is in consulting. And we're going to talk about that soon. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to but wait, there's more. You also had, you faced one of the ugliest monsters in this world, cancer. And I want you to talk about that, because now, we're getting into territory where an inspirational quote's not going to always do justice.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, wow, I don't know where you get that list from, but you know a lot
Oh,
about
I
me.
got
This is
researchers. I got good researchers.
yeah, so again, I was lucky that it was caught extremely early. It was breast cancer. And I was just doing, those checkups they tell you to do in the shower where you put your arm up and you check your breast. And I felt what I thought was a lump. And I'm like, nah. Because again, it's not supposed to happen to me.
Yeah,
If you notice, after all the stuff that still has happened to me, I still think it's never going to happen to me.
yeah,
You have a whole list.
yeah.
And I'm like, it's probably nothing. I'll just go to the doctor. And she felt the lump and she said, yeah, we're going to do a biopsy. And biopsy comes back and she said, okay, we're going to remove it. I said to her, I'm done having kids. Just take the whole breast. I don't even need you to take the lump out. She goes, okay, relax. We're going to remove the lump. And then we're going to do regular checkups. And that had happened the same season. So spring, that had happened in spring. I was getting over that. A week later, I had started with Target. So physically, I was still recovering from that surgery, starting Target. And then 2 months later, I had to get kidney surgery done because I had excessive kidney stones um, in both my kidneys.
Is
So
that
it
from
was,
stress?
I think from a female perspective, we naturally produce more calcium. So I am an overachiever at kidney stones as well, where I just had too many of them. So they literally had to clean out my kidneys. Why I'm sharing this is because you're in a hospital bed for a week, just a week, whereas other people are there for much longer. And my mental impact on that just went down. I turned from color to gray because, again, it just takes such a toll on you. Obviously, the recovery, the meds. I had just gotten breast surgery done, and now I'm getting my kidneys done, and it drains you, and it gives you a lot of time to think. Now, did I use that time to think positive thoughts? Absolutely not, because I, again, was sitting in the victim pool. And I said, okay, how do I recover from this? I'm not even, back then, I wasn't even 40. This can't happen to me. Why does this keep happening to me?
And
Instead of,
also, we don't have, from my understanding, any family history.
no, nothing.
Yeah.
Well, luck, God bless, our parents don't have anything major. So I was fixated on why me instead of, okay, what now?
Mm, I like that.
And I wish that I knew that back then because I wasted a lot of time in that hospital bed. And instead of thinking, why me, and thinking, what now, I could have been like, okay, time to get healthy, understand what causes these kidney stones. What can I do better? And that's something that was a big realization for me after I got healthy, because forget the pain of the breast and the kidneys, the mental pain I went through, I'm never going to do that again, ever, because it was horrendous.
Mm,
It was a dark cloud that then got me back into seeing somebody professionally
mm-hmm,
because I knew that was a lever I can pull.
mm.
And it helped. It really helped get me out of whatever I was in.
And you had
Um,
and it was a full recovery from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's full, everything's great. And that really then got me on the path of just, having, as you said, two amazing children that are very athletic. It's like, okay, I'm never going to be an athlete, but how do I get into a level where I can just be good? How can I maybe not choose other vices,
Yeah.
such as some vino that I enjoy once in a while, and just choose to go and build all this serotonin and adrenaline that this doctor keeps telling me about naturally.
Yeah.
So you walk into a gym, you get a trainer, and man, that's hard.
Mm.
It's hard, but then you see slow improvements.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm not competing to be a swimsuit model or competing to be an athlete. I just want to do this so that I feel happy. And it actually made a difference.
Mm.
Sleep better, you eat better, you feel good.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew all this stuff earlier. I really, really do. But then I wouldn't have, I think, found it naturally this way. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
I
saying?
think there's that I wish I knew it earlier, but this is how you know it.
Yeah.
It's and even even now as impart this stuff on your kids, and I think that one of the cool things too is like you work out with your kids. So,
Hmm.
share those videos of y'all in the gym, and your son being almost a semi-pro athlete now. He takes it way more serious than you're gonna take it, but it's probably still just as fun to work out with him. Even if and I remember even like when he first, because he goes away for school now. He got a football scholarship, and he's at a really cool high school. And me and him went out to dinner, and I remember just even being like, okay, I have a list of things I'm gonna like impart him with and wisdom, blah blah blah. And maybe after 5 minutes, I'm like, no, like we're just gonna talk shit and have
Yeah.
fun and bust jokes, because you can give them, someone can tell you the stove is hot. Most likely, you're gonna have to burn
Yeah.
yourself on the stove to actually absorb it. And obviously, we want to put them in a situation where they're gonna have to face problems, and ideally, you want to prevent them from the redundancy of solving the same problem that you had to solve, so they can solve
Yeah.
the next set of problems. And I know that,
Yeah.
on my journey as an artist, trying to work with other artists, it's not about protecting them. It's about, all right, if it took me 10 years, let me try to get you there in 5.
Yeah.
So you can spend the next 5 years solving the next set of problems. And maybe if anything, teach me,
Yeah.
and your kids are going to get to that point where they're going to encounter something uncomfortable, and running back to you will not be an option, because you won't be equipped for it.
Yeah.
There's certain problems that you went to where running to mom and dad, they're just not equipped for it. They don't have experience with any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the definition of an adult. And all you can do is, set some guardrails in the beginning and slowly loosen them up. Two statements I love that you said, because I think this is really important too, for people listening. The first one was, this sucks, but we'll get through it. I think acknowledge, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
We always say it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you handle it. But like, you're allowed to take some time and just cry it out, scream it out, punch the wall. You're allowed to have that emotional time. Don't
Yeah.
deny yourself that. Don't assume nobody has that. Everybody has
Yeah.
emotional reactions. Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot. He's like, it's just about practicing how long those reactions are.
Hmm.
And this same thing when I'm doing all this ice training. It's every time I go in, it sucks. Every time I go in, my body's like, we're going to die. The question is, instead of that being the first 2 minutes of the journey, can I
Yeah.
bring that down to 1 minute? Can I bring that down to 30 seconds? And if I don't do it after a while, it's going to hit me again. I'm sure if you go through a long period of time where you're not hit with any of this stuff, then all of a sudden different challenges happen. So this sucks, but we'll get through it. And the other one I really like was picking what now over why me,
Yeah.
because you could spend years wondering why me. None of the answers will lead to anything constructive. And generally, the first problem with having a problem is people assuming that it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this shouldn't be a problem. I shouldn't be having cancer. I shouldn't be getting laid off. I shouldn't be getting divorced. But it's like, unfortunately, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And the quicker you decide what now, what can I do
Yeah.
now? How can I address this? I think people will be better off. And then that's where you acquire all these tools. Everything that you said, I wish I knew earlier. This is how you it's like that a
Yeah.
video game. You've mined these tools and this wisdom out. So I
Yeah,
think
for
that's
sure.
super amazing. Um,
There's another one that I really I don't know where I saw it. It must have been a talk and I apologize, I can't quote the person. I, as you know, probably me personally, I'm a nurturer. I'm an empath. I take on everyone's everything. And it was a very simple concept, and it was inner circle and outer circle. So it was about this lady. She was sitting on a plane and her plane was delayed. So she was going to miss her connecting flight. And it was an important business meeting, what have you. The gentleman beside her said, "What's in your inner circle that you can control? And what's in your outer circle? And the stuff that's in your outer circle, leave it. Don't waste any time stressing about it because you can't control it. Can you control the plane being late? Can you control yourself missing the other connecting plane? No."
Mm,
And the minute, and I'm like, oh, and it's always the simple stuff. So that's also why I love, your first book is my favorite because for me, it's one-page chapters. I don't want to sit there and read a whole book. And it's simple and it's digestible. So then anytime I get a little bit anxious about just regular everyday stuff, it's like, okay, what's in my control and what's not in my control? What's in my inner circle? I can make sure I get a good breakfast. I can make sure I drink my water. But if there's a pandemic or if the internet is down, that's out of my control. So why am I wasting stress? And that simple inner versus outer has really enabled me to not freak out about everything
mm,
and focus on the things that I can change.
mm-hmm.
And it was huge. It was huge in terms of a learning, right? Because
Yeah.
all of us as humans carry guilt, whether it's parental guilt, work guilt, eating right guilt, working out guilt, what we look like, and it's all spinning plates.
Yeah.
We're humans and we stand, and I don't know if some of your younger viewers will know this, but it's a circus act where there's sticks
Yeah.
and the individual would put a plate on one and it would spin and then put a plate on the other and then they'd have 10 plates up, and the whole goal was to make sure all those plates kept spinning
Yeah.
and nothing drops. Enough with these spinning plates. Let's pick one or two plates that are important to us
Mm,
that we have control over and let the other ones drop, because who cares? Who cares if we don't have the best clothes or if we're not the most fittest in our bathing suits? Who cares? And I remember this story about that. I took our mother and our aunt, our Buaji, for their first time ever to Cuba.
yeah.
As many immigrant moms, and all your viewers will know, our mothers have sacrificed a lot, especially ones that have immigrated over. They've spent so much time giving and working hard. And I said, you guys are going to come over to
Mm-hmm.
Cuba. And I took them to the pool and they said, "Ooh, we feel a little uncomfortable in our very, very covering bathing suits." And I said, "Why?" "Well, we just feel like we're not fully dressed." I said, "Okay." I go, "Look around you. There are beautiful women in their 20s here. Even if you were two were naked, who's going to look at you two?" And they kind of paused and they said, "You're right. Who the hell is going to look at us? We're going to," and it was so small but so pivotal that really opened up who they were. And I had gone with them with my two young kids at the time. So I had
Yeah.
assumed they would hang out with me, help me with my kids. I used to see them for dinner because then they took massages on the beach.
Yeah.
I'd be walking by the pool. My aunt had a partner where she was doing aqua aerobics with some random man partner who was partnered up with her. But they opened up and they said this thing. They said, "You're right." And it's, again, who cares? And another thing that they said that really hit me, because I would have never thought of this, my aunt said, "Gurbir," and usually these trips are 7 days, right? She's like, "This is day," and she would say this every single day to me, "This is day 5. I haven't stepped foot in the kitchen. This is day
Wow.
6. I haven't stepped foot in the kitchen, and we've never been on a beach."
Yeah.
And I was like, again, not in a mean way, but you have to put this filter on of who cares.
Mm,
And if somebody cares that much about something about you, screw them. Because people that love you, as you said earlier when we were talking, they're going to love you for whoever you are.
yeah.
In that filter, I equate it to me just getting older and becoming more of a BB, which I wear with pride, but who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Simple.
a
Who cares?
and for additional context, the aunt is my dad's sister. So
Yeah.
this is my mom and her sister-in-law, which again also is just a beautiful fact that they're vacationing together. And I know after that, when I went with them to Dominican, and I saw that because they were much more. It was a cool situation because at the same time, like they're still aunties and they wake up early. So they wake up and they've had a full day before I
Yeah.
roll out of bed at 1 p.m. And now
Yeah.
we can hang out. And they've already done yoga, done their walks on the beach, taken a class, gone swimming, got that out of their system. And
Yeah.
then now they're like exhausted by 2 p.m. And then I'm waking up like, hey, what are we doing today? But I think that was really is really interesting. And it goes back to also what you said. Even then, they sometimes have defined those
Yeah.
prisons and those constraints. And there's a big pattern in immigrant communities, especially the ones that are labeled patriarchy, where it's the victims of it that become the perpetrators of it. You know, you go from being a prisoner in that jail to becoming a prison guard in that
Yeah.
jail, because it's like, well, I couldn't, so now the next person could. And I've seen that even in siblings. And going back to honoring you from the rebel side of it, I do remember bluntly being a little kid, you arguing with mom and dad about when he grows up, you're not going to say anything to him about going
Mm-hmm.
out. And at this time, being way too young to even wonder what going out meant, you know, because I was probably scared of the dark. I was only going out during the day anyways to ride my bike. And you were right. You were absolutely right. But I think, you know, recognizing that, like, you set that tone. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna disappoint my mom and my dad and my, you know, just these extended. Everyone's just perpetuating that nobody can have this freedom to be themselves. And
Yeah.
at the same time, you know, it can go the other way, having way too much freedom, and then, you know, me being self-employed and not having any structure in my life. That in itself can be a whole challenge. So I definitely want to honor that, because I do realize not everybody has that. And what you have to do for those listening is you got to recognize that you might not have had it, but now you are in a situation to be the
Mm-hmm.
first to break that cycle. You know,
Yeah.
there's always gonna have to be a first. And if it wasn't your older siblings, then let it be you. Break that cycle. It can be done with baby steps. It doesn't have to be with these big grand gestures. Um, and one of the conversations that I think we can all have with mom and dad is, now if shit hits the fan in our life, no one's ever pointing their fingers at you two. No
Yeah.
one's ever gonna. It is impossible to resent mom and dad because we don't listen to them. And
Yeah.
you know, and in the long run, that I think has resulted in a very healthy relationship, as healthy as it can be. And I think that's really important for people to understand too, which is like, don't turn yourself into a martyr. Creating your own boundaries, your own cages.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand why the cages come. Sometimes they're created to protect ourselves from something that we experience, but
Yeah.
then those same walls are just blocking us from creating meaningful relationships, um, living life by our own terms. Because the other thing too is, when we don't live a life that is authentic to ourselves, whatever that is, that lack of peace or dis-ease, which is, you know, disease, we do stuff subconsciously to deal with that.
Yeah.
We medicate that.
Yeah.
We distract from that, you know. And there's something to be said about, you know, chasing pleasure, not because it feels good, but because we just don't want to feel bad anymore. I really hope you're enjoying this conversation with my sister. As you can see, she's got a lot to say, and it's just amazing. You get also an idea of how what I grew up with. You know, I have some super smart people in my family. I'm definitely the dumbest in my house, and I'm super grateful for that, because you never want to be the smartest person in the room. And she's just sharing this, and she's sharing it with such honesty and precision, and I love the fact that she's done that. Again, if you're enjoying this, please share this with somebody who you think is going to really resonate with the message. Again, just send them the link or show them how to get onto the podcast and how to subscribe. If you haven't already done so on Spotify, on Apple, or wherever else you're listening to this podcast, please subscribe. Please leave a rating. Please leave a review. And also, let's strengthen our connection. Meet me at humblethepoet.com/community, and you can find more like-minded, handsome friends. Let's get on to the rest of the conversation. I have been pulled by things subconsciously,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? From the life that I'm living, you know, when I go back and pick up the breadcrumbs, it's like, oh, you were writing stuff since you were super young
Yeah.
and sharing it and having it validated. Um, this was always in the cards, no matter how much you try to do something else,
Yeah.
you would have just kept getting snapped back into this. Um, and what I'm realizing with you is this idea of relationships and community building. I think that's a very common theme in yours, especially all of these challenging moments of bullshit have always kind of brought you back to that. You know, you losing your job and first thinking about your team.
Yeah.
Your marriage hitting the fan there. You're thinking about your kids, your efforts to like, keep the family together, keep everything happening. And now, you're self-employed, and now you've started a company called Malta Group. And that's exactly what it is. You started an entire company to build communities, to help people and do this. I want you to talk about that, because I think it's interesting now that
Yeah.
somebody knows your story, why this isn't simply just like a company. It's a culture, and it's a movement in itself.
Yeah, no, for sure. So this definitely was something that came out of experiences from myself that we just talked about, and also my business partner, where we really want to help people be the best they can be in an honest way
Yeah,
on a professional side. We can all remember mentors and other people that we've had that have really enabled us to be successful. And when I say successful, I don't mean money per se, but I mean happiness, feeling like you did a good job. And we created Malto Group because we really wanted to connect people with the right type of company so that there can be a good union and not just a forced union, so that the goals of both can happen. We either smartly or not decided to open up a company during the pandemic. And I remember talking to one of my mentors, and I love her. I said, I'm scared. I'm scared to death. Are we doing the right thing? And it's a lot of obviously investment. And she said to me very simply, she said, it's just money. So you're going to lose it. You make more. She just said it so calmly. I'm like, oh, she goes, it's just money. You've never lost money before?
mm,
You've never made money before? Is that the only thing holding you back? And through the calmness of her voice, it hit me with so much power. And I was like, yeah, it is just money. And if you never try, you don't know how you're going to be. And this is, I really had to do this because now I have older kids that are actually taking an interest in what we do and taking an interest in the entrepreneurship. Regardless of what my children or I grow up to be, the rules that we have in our house is you have to be healthy and happy. No one needs to be a doctor or a lawyer or an NFL athlete. As long as you're healthy and happy, that will enable you to utmost have the best hustle.
yeah,
If your hustle includes being the best gas station attendant, oh my God, and that makes you happy, you do you. We work to live. We shouldn't live to work. Our parents had to live to work. They
yeah,
did. And if we don't honor them by working to live, then we fail them. So Malto Group, you're absolutely right, is something that we really, really want to open up because we want to help. And my business partner the other day just asked me, he said, so do you want this to be the biggest company ever and successful? I said, no, but I want to be happy in it and I want to be diversified in it
mm,
because that'll bring me joy. And again, I want to hustle. We have to hustle. And if we don't succeed, at least we tried and we learn from it. Life is about trying and learning,
yeah.
and it's
And
okay to
and in
fail.
terms of what Malto Group does,
Yeah.
you guys are pretty much your connectors.
We're,
You build a
well,
community of talent, and you connect
yeah.
them with people who need that talent.
Yeah, so we have a lot of clients that are looking for a certain type of group of people, or we call intellectual capital, right?
Yeah,
Where they have all these ideas, but they're busy running their daily operations.
yeah,
So they either call on ourselves, the partners, to say, help us build this strategy so we can execute it,
yeah,
or help us bring in the people that can help us execute this strategy. So it's
mm,
double fold. So especially in the world today, there's so much stuff that people are doing. They just don't necessarily have the expertise
yeah,
to be able to execute or build it. And we've had a lot of experience. So we come in and say, you, and we're from the outside looking in. So it's so much easier. You guys need to do this, this, and this, and this. And to support this, you need these people. So it is a connection in a way that's going to set them up for success.
mm,
And it's based on success in general, right? In an ethical way that's going to really promote the intellectual capital that's supporting them and helping them grow, and also helping the client or company organizations grow as well.
So
Yeah.
it's really in this, because I know, like, for me on my journey, I had to do it by myself for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I'm wearing, let's say, 25 hats. I'm only really a rock star with one or two things. You
Yeah.
know, I put in the
Yeah.
10,000 hours maybe in terms of creating visuals or putting words together, but I'm not an accountant. I'm not an administrator. I'm not
Hmm.
a website builder. I'm not a negotiator. I'm not a, you know, a logistics coordinator.
Yeah.
I'm none of these things. And then you start to realize, like, if you want this to grow, you have to find people who are rock stars at those things.
Yeah.
Rock
Yeah.
star accountant, found a rock star person who can help, you know, build your website. Find a rock star who can connect you with brands to do branded deals. Find a rock star to get you
Yeah.
auditions for stuff like that. Find a rock star to book your flights and get all, because all of these things take calories from your brain and
They
it takes
do.
energy. And so, you know, what you call intellectual capital is you find the rock stars, and then people come to you with ideas and you help them, you connect them with the right rock stars to bring this
Yeah.
to life. And this is what you got from your consulting. This is you taking
Yeah.
your consulting to the next level, in terms of helping businesses. And I think that's really interesting, because I think, like, everything that you've gone through has just prepped you for this, because, you know, it's not just dollars and cents. It's really about solving problems. It's about getting people attached to a mission. You know, the
Yeah.
big thing is when, especially when people work for larger organizations, as we called it the Kool-Aid, but it's, companies have missions. You know, I know the people that work with me and for me, they're not there for the paycheck. They're there because they see the bigger mission. They see what
Yeah.
this means, what this is the start of, you know, how this will contribute to the movement of underrepresented people in art. And I think it's really interesting that these aren't things that are taught in school. You know, so you can find
Yeah.
somebody who can code, but, you know, the soft skills necessary
Yeah.
to integrate and collaborate and stuff like that. So I think that's a really interesting thing. So, you know, for me, I think it's a no-brainer that this is going to do really well,
Thank
um,
you.
because, again, I've never seen anybody who stuck with anything that didn't have something to show for it over a couple of years. And
Yeah.
it's socially acceptable to spend 10 years to be a doctor, be in debt, have no money, have nothing to show for it other than being able to check off steps on that template to get there. But
Yeah.
legitimately, if you gave yourself 10 years, you could do anything,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
especially if it's that. And the other beautiful thing too is when you successfully solve problems for people, they'll give you resources to keep solving problems for them. So I think from that
Absolutely.
standpoint, I think that's really interesting. So my last question is, this is a question I'm going to ask all my guests.
Yeah.
The cliche question is, if you can go back 5 years, what would you tell yourself? Right? That's the cliche question. So I just flip it.
Hmm.
If
Okay.
2021 version of you can travel 5 years into the future, what would you tell that version of yourself?
I would say very simply, because I'm really practicing this now, is trust your gut.
Mm,
We have this amazing gut that we don't listen to or trust,
yeah,
but it's there. And to trust it because it's never wrong. For me, any decision you make, it should never give you a full comfort. You should always be a little bit nervous or
yeah,
scared because that means you're growing.
yeah,
And I always say that to people is if you take a new job or you aren't nervous starting a new sports team or going to school on the first day, if you're not nervous, that means you're not growing. So
mm,
do stuff that makes you nervous and your
yeah,
gut will help you lead you there, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a sure decision. It's just going to lead you in the right path.
yeah,
And my kids are like, "Do you still get nervous?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I still get nervous. Absolutely." But that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing because it's growing your comfort zone and adding to your toolbox, as you said, of things that you're going to use later
yeah.
and be okay with that uncomfortable feeling.
So I love that. And I just want to have some extended questions on that. How much? So, I mean, you know, it's, you have your kids half the time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, your son, which is, and this is not typical, at 14 he moved out because he's going to that school.
Yeah.
um and now your house gets dramatically quieter. Also, like, you know, you guys, you know, props to you and your ex-husband in terms of y'all just partnered up to at least keep him in line. And you guys have
Yeah.
always been on the same page when it came to the kids,
Yes.
even after all these years of the divorce. How much of that impacted, you know, you said you chose not to listen to your gut before, you chose not to use it, but how much of that do you think impacted how much of your gut you recognize now?
A lot.
Yeah.
Um, so just a little bit of context to what you're saying. So our son, decided to go to this school. It's a boarding school. He made this decision within 2 weeks.
Mm,
So We assumed he was going to this other high school, decided to make this decision. As you said, he decided to live there. And again, I'm okay with this. I thought I was okay with this. Everything's fine. 2 weeks later, I break out with shingles.
Mm.
And again, it's my body saying, really, Gurbir, really, have you learned nothing? I just stifled all the stress. I didn't sit with it. I didn't trust my gut. And I
Yeah.
just pushed it down. And my body's like, yeah, that's what you're going to do. We're going to give you shingles. And I had shingles that I had to
Wow.
recover from in 3 weeks. And so the one thing that my life partner right now that I have who's amazing, he's like, Gurbir, you have to be comfortable being alone
Mm.
because we don't live together. And he's like, you have to be okay living alone. And I've really, really taken that to heart now, as you said, because I have a lot more time alone. And just like you with the pandemic, there was a stretch of 5 weeks where I didn't see anybody except for the kids, which is every other week. And it's okay to be alone.
Mm.
And I never realized that was okay until other people are like, you're lucky you're alone and you're lucky you don't have a spouse and this and that. And I'm like, really? Oh, I guess it is. But yeah, it forced me to listen to my gut.
Yeah.
And it forced me to, if this makes sense, it forced me to stick up for my gut when the other parts of my brain during my low times wanted to get back into the pity pool and wanted to feel anxiety and wanted to feel sad. And I almost had to be like, no, 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 no. I'm going to listen to my gut. No, everybody stop. Was I always successful? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But you have to be aware of it and be okay with it.
Yeah. There's a guy I met recently. His name is Amar Atma, um, and he's a self-professed. He calls himself a spiritual scuba diver, which I think is just a
Oh,
beautiful term.
that's awesome.
And I don't have the notes in front of me, and I don't know where those notes are. But he gave me the actual scientific term, the pathway from your brain to your body, and the pathway from your body to your brain.
Mhm.
Right? So they have
Mhm.
just subtle names, but he was explaining how the pathway from your body to your brain, how strong it is. And that is what we refer to as our gut. So there's
Mm.
so much of who we are, what
Yeah.
we're, and this is going back to the idea of like having a calling more so than, this is what I tell you, like, don't try to live your passion. Your passion is what you just like in the moment. Like try to live your obsession, which requires you to do the work to discover your obsession. And
Yeah.
I don't even know if we get to choose our obsessions. I don't know if I chose this life because it really feels like it's choosing me and I don't
Yeah.
have another option. And I'm seeing the same thing with you with the community building. Um, but this idea of listening to your gut, you definitely, the environment, creating an environment to hear the gut, and this is meditation, sitting in a room quietly and doing nothing, or just sitting in a room quietly and listening to whatever is happening there.
Yeah.
We are so used to distracting ourselves and always being in front of a phone or having a TV on, having the people
Yes.
around. We're not comfortable having silences around people. And that is where, the importance of the gut comes. And I do feel like the pandemic did that for a lot of people, just in general, because it's like everyone was going a million miles a minute, and then the world pressed pause and everybody had to involuntarily stop, and then they could hear voices and they could hear
Mhm.
new things, and people made dramatic life changes, and I think the entire psyche of the planet had a significant nudge. The other cool idea that I've been learning recently too is because I started on this pendulum idea of going too far the other way, going too far the other way. um, I started just kind of speaking out from my chest all the time and being like, I'm honoring my gut, I'm honoring my gut, I'm honoring my gut. Then I listened to a lecture explaining the significance of Pinocchio. So Pinocchio, he has his Jiminy Cricket, and Jiminy
Mhm.
Cricket serves as his conscience, right? And for folklore, Jiminy Cricket, JC, Jesus Christ, all of this type of
Yeah.
stuff. The overall methodical idea of God being that within you that allows you to move past fear, right?
Yeah.
But the cool thing about the Jiminy Cricket character was Jiminy Cricket himself was not the smartest character in the movie. Jiminy Cricket made mistakes. Jiminy Cricket looked the wrong way sometimes. Jiminy Cricket led Pinocchio to the wrong spot. Sometimes it was Pinocchio that made Jiminy Cricket take that leap of faith.
Yeah.
So it was this idea of trust your gut. Your gut is your friend. Your gut
Yeah.
cares about you. but your gut isn't a genius with all the answers. Your
Yeah.
gut is a learning thing as well.
Yeah.
And if you have this attitude about, it's not win or lose, it's not pass or fail, it's trial and error.
Yeah.
And try stuff, celebrate, and then learn from the errors. Celebrate yourself for trying, and take time to recover from the errors and learn from them. And
Yeah.
it's Ray Dalio saying, like, it's not 10,000 hours to be a master, it's 10,000 trial and errors.
Yeah.
And if
For
anybody
sure.
sticks with anything, they can do that. So I think it's an important thing where I'm listening for everybody with this trusting your gut, because people feel confused and they feel lost and they don't know what the answers are. And it's kind of like, because there is so much outside noise, and it's so quick how that outside noise becomes inside noise,
Yeah.
where it's somebody might have said, oh, you don't look good in that yellow dress. 10 years go by and now you think you hate yellow,
Yeah.
because that
For
voice now,
sure.
it sounds like you. Or I'm writing about, my book's about love right now, and I'm specifically looking at my notes about romantic comedies, Disney, and porn, and how that impacts our definition of relationships. And
Yeah.
we don't notice it, because we think, oh, love at first sight, or we think about, chivalry, or we think about, being the knight in shining armor or the princess, and how so much of that is just it's counterproductive to actually
Yeah.
getting results in our life. Um, so I think when it comes to the gut, it's okay that if you trust your gut, things blow up in your face. I think
Yeah.
that's the big thing. I don't want to sell this romantic idea of just following it. And I think at the same time, to another brilliant point that you brought up, um, you always got to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna push it and say, let's ensure it's unfamiliar, because even
Mm-hmm.
we can get familiar with discomfort, like especially like working out at the gym.
Yeah. Good
It
call.
sucks.
Yeah.
You hold a plank and it
Yeah.
sucks, but it's a familiar discomfort, so you do it.
You do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but let's constantly be unfamiliar, and let's
Yeah.
look at that fear as kind of a compass. And I think that's where we will really see that growth all the time. And it's
Yeah.
completely okay to fall on your face. And I love, and I really appreciate you sharing all these stories, because there are many stories of you having to fall on your face,
Yep.
many stories of you sticking to the script, doing everything that everybody wanted you to do, holding up so much on your shoulders. And I think the irony of all that is, despite all of these perceived blemishes, perceived because they're not really blemishes, this is this is what makes the leather, it's wearing in the leather.
Yeah.
It's making sure that, you know you're living a full and used up life. um I feel like everybody in the family still looks at you the exact same way. And if anything,
Yeah.
it's because you not only did you strive at the things that everyone thought you were supposed to, you're not a cancer survivor, you're a cancer thriver. And I want to thank you for helping me, when I shot my video, helping to help me find fellow cancer thrivers. And that was a
Mm-hmm.
really important thing, to kind of show that from a lens of strength and not a lens of self-pity or
Yeah.
victimhood. And I appreciate that, despite all these things that you've been through, you don't look at yourself as a victim. It's just kind of a student of all of that. um, so I really want to honor you and thank you for that. And again, just thank you for creating this environment that I wouldn't have picked up on until I met other people, of just like, yo, like, learn the rules to break them. Like, legit, that
Yeah.
was kind of what it was. It was like, these are the rules.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to break. We realized, mom and dad set these lines
Yeah.
arbitrarily and couldn't do much. And I was just thinking about that too, even when one of my friend's dogs was over yesterday, and I was just trying to explain to him how my father was with our dog. And I was like, he was the biggest discipliner, but he was also the one that gave the most table scraps. He was also the one that
Yes.
he was also the one that communicated the most for the dog. No, 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 he's tired. He's this, he's that. So it's kind of
Yeah.
just, people love the way they know. And I think, we got really lucky with that. Um, and then before we end off, just for my listeners, and even just for myself too, I remember I was probably in university when somebody said to me, "Yo, man, you're different," and I'm not saying that as a compliment. And I thought that was
Oh,
it was yeah, it was a really interesting thing. And I think what he
it
was trying to
is.
tell me is like, you seem to butt heads with traditional thoughts and structures a lot. And I definitely feel like I'm honoring my reality, living the life that I'm living, both
Yeah,
from
for sure.
an intellectual standpoint, a spiritual standpoint, a creative standpoint. But I don't think I would have realized that anytime. I don't think I was picking up on any of this as a kid. Did any of this stand out? This is completely a selfish, self-indulged question, but did any of this stand out to you with me growing up? Or was this a surprise to you as well? Because again, I understood this with mom and dad, especially.
Yeah.
They had no prep to have a weirdo artist kid. But what about from a sibling standpoint?
So, and I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I think you had written a story. You couldn't have been more than grade 3 or 4. And I don't know if you remember this story. You came home and you let me read it. And it was about domestic abuse. And it was a husband and wife, but it was so powerfully written. And that was probably the first time and it was obviously still within, the confines of someone in grade 3 and 4, but it was so deep. I was like, how did his brain, who's just my kid brother, write something like this? And I think that was the
And you're in
first
high school.
time.
You're not in high school.
No,
You're in middle school at this time.
middle school. I would have been in middle school.
Yeah.
And I was actually taken aback because it was so deep. And it wasn't dark, but it was deep. It wasn't long. And you were very nonchalant about it. And I was like, that's my first memory of kind of who you were. And then, fine, I never thought you as being, odd or whatever you're saying. But then the other time after that, fast forward, was the first time I heard spoken word from you. So I've always known you as my brother. You were a regular brother. But the minute you spoke, you transformed into something that just seemed so natural because you do it with so much power. And the big joke we have in our family, and I don't know if anyone has ever told you this, so I'm sorry if I'm going to reveal this with you, is you're a phenomenal rapper. You're phenomenal. You're singing, auto tune a little bit, but the way you write and the way you recite words, I think seeing you on stage, and I don't know if you remember this, it was, I was recovering from my divorce. I had fallen. I was living with my sister and I had fallen accidentally in their bathroom and I had hurt my back. And you said, Gurbir, come with me. I got a gig. I'm like, no, I don't want to come with you. You're like, just come. Now, if you remember that. So I went with you. I actually drove you in my minivan and you just transformed. And it just comes so naturally. You don't try. And I've never seen you be stressed about writing something or talking about something. And that was the second time I was like, no, he's not different. This is just him. We just never saw it, not in a bad way.
Mm.
And then the last real kind of hit me, and then it just became normal that you're humble, was when you asked us to proofread your book
Mm.
and edit it because you didn't have publishers back then. You didn't have the
Right.
money. So you leveraged us, which also was interesting because I'm business English and you're artistic English.
Yeah.
So it bugged the crap out of me that you wrote the way you did. But then again, my brain was different. And I was like, holy crap. Wow. Like this stuff is amazing, simple, and digestible.
Mm.
And it makes sense. And I wouldn't know. I wouldn't say I thought you were different. You just always had it in you, and I saw it kind of transform.
Mm.
And I think it was always in you. Mom and dad, absolutely. And I'll also say, I don't know if mom and dad saw it, but the big thing for mom and dad was when you won Canada Reads.
Mm.
Okay. Great. It was awesome. It was great for Canada. And when I asked mom and dad about it, they said, oh, sweetheart, we had lunch with the producers. They invited us to the green room. They paid for our parking. And there were
Yeah.
these bags that were there. We thought people forgot them. So we didn't touch them. But then we were told they were swag. We didn't know what that meant. So we
Swag.
still didn't take them. And you know me, when I come to your stuff, I'm going to
Yeah.
wear my lanyard and take all the freebies because that's what a
Yeah.
sister does.
Yeah.
I was like, so your son just won Canada Reads. He's nationally syndicated. And your highlights were the free lunch, the free parking, and the fact that you realized those were free bags,
Yeah.
which God bless their humbleness and simplicity.
Yeah.
And then I realized they still don't get what he does. They still have no idea the impact that he just made on so many people and how that also helped you in other ways in your life.
Yeah,
But they were really focused on, wow, our son's at a point where the producers invite us
yeah.
for free lunch.
And that part definitely has been an interesting thing. Like Lily taught me really quickly. She's like, look, all these cool experiences, they'll stop being cool after the third time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's red carpets are cool, but anything anybody does, you do them 3, 4
Yeah.
times, it becomes your
You get
normal.
used to it.
And it was, and I'll tell this briefly because I know we've gone over time, but um, it was that one time we had a family event. Well, first off, I don't remember this domestic abuse story at all, but I do remember writing another story about, heavily inspired by Freddy Krueger, about my teacher killing all the students, and that became a
Oh.
very popular story because I named every kid in the story, and it was
Oh.
about how the teacher snapped, and back then I guess this stuff wasn't flagged, but it was a comedy. It was
Was
like the
it like,
teacher sticking the
yeah.
students, Jason's head
Yeah.
into the pencil sharpener and sharpening it. It was really just a rip off of Freddy Krueger, and I think it was at that same age because that was the time we would write a story, an
Yeah. That is
adult
so
volunteer would type
interesting
it
you
up.
don't remember it because you spoke about her black eye and like it was so poignant for
I
such a,
think it was probably a moment that I was probably impacted by something, and I was taught
yeah.
about. It's super
Yeah.
interesting, and also because we were definitely focused on like the math and the sciences, and like I have a
Yeah.
degree in IT, and even when I became a teacher, it was still focusing more on that.
Yeah.
And the general assumption is around writers is they can't do that, and even now, like I'm coding, I'm learning how to code,
Yeah.
I'm still doing
Awesome.
that whole side of things. Um, but there was that story about when we had that family cottage, which was, and you were probably the oldest family member at that cottage. And it was like a Canada Day, and then me, a bunch of cousins, we took mushrooms. We didn't
Oh,
tell
yeah.
anybody,
Yeah.
and then I took too much, and I was freaking out. I was overwhelmed. They were all looking to me for support. That was freaking me out, and I ran out of the house. And I was running out of the house. There's a bunch of you know other houses having parties, and I saw the cops, and I was like, oh shit, I don't want to, like, if I get arrested by a police officer right now, I'll die of a heart attack. And I ran inside, and I'm literally playing hide and seek because I'm just having all these ideas in my head about like what the family's going to think about me if they see that.
Yeah.
And then I come into your room, and you're in bed because at that point, um, your son, you had your kids there and they were asleep. And I remember telling you, I'm
Yeah.
just like, yo, I'm freaking the fuck out. I'm on mushrooms. I need you
Yeah.
to help me. And you let me pretty much lay in your lap. You rub my head, and you
Yeah.
just like talk to me. And you talk, and I'm sure everybody can hear your radio FM voice right now, so it's very soothing. And I remember me having this moment of, oh shit, my sister's a mom, but she ain't my mom. And but I still get all the mom love. That's a win,
Yeah.
and that's something I've definitely been making the most of. But the second thing was that was the first time you told me the entire story of like the divorce and how it had an impact on the kids. And that's what changed my priorities to like, yo, create these moments for other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like that small thing about mom and dad, like the gift that I don't, you probably don't care about swag bags. I definitely don't care about swag bags because I was excited and it's just a bunch of bags with a bunch of stuff that you have no place to put it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and, and it's not an entitled thing, it's that you get used to that. Or of course you're gonna comp my parking. Or of course,
Yeah.
and I remember like other events taking them and them getting that VIP treatment. You could see how that mattered, and I saw that.
Yeah.
And being able to like take friends to different places, and you know us going to Universal Studios and getting the passes, and
Yeah.
I got
That
to
was
do that with my
awesome.
friends recently, and get them to skip all the lines, and realizing that like I wouldn't normally even go to these places anymore unless I had someone to take with me. Or when we got to go see Sean Paul, same thing. It was and but for
It
me,
was
I remember when
awesome.
I first told you about me doing this music and doing the art, you said something like, I want to meet Sean Paul and I want to come with you to the Grammys. I don't know if the
Yeah.
Grammys are on my vision board in any way, shape, or form, because you would have to sell away so now you have to sell your IP to somebody to qualify. They're not
Mm,
they're not
yeah.
anybody who owns their own IP will never qualify for a Grammy. You know,
Yeah.
but to be able to go full circle and honor that Sean Paul situation, because again, I was living in LA at this point,
Yeah.
and these aren't impressive stories for the people that I'm around because this is regular stuff. But I mean, that was a really interesting thing. And it also kind of rehashed it down to me, which is like, this can be a priority. You know, it's less
Yeah.
about doing it for the gram and more about doing it for people who you're pulling them out of their daily life once a
Yeah.
year.
It's some, you're creating memories that are a lifetime,
Yeah.
right? Even your Charlize Theron video, which I've seen way too many times because it's on repeat, but it makes an impact, right?
Your
Like it makes,
partner Charlize Theron is
yes,
his hall pass, and
yes.
then I ended up getting to hang out with her for a couple of days, and then
You got
got
him a
her.
personalized video. It wasn't just a video. We have to say
Yeah,
it's a personalized video. So, yeah, I think that's amazing that you do that. Or the Leafs experience you gave the kids, right? Where you
yeah,
said, "Hey, can I pull all my nieces and nephews out of school to watch the 100th game?"
yeah,
And it was just, yeah, it's the experiences are priceless, right? Versus the stuff you can give any of us.
yeah,
It is
completely.
truly priceless. It is.
And I think that's been a really big thing because you start to realize how quickly the stuff can get old for you. And I think
Yeah.
even coming back to Toronto for the pandemic, realizing how far I've got because you don't. Because again, when I'm in LA, I am the least famous, I am the least
Yeah.
wealthy, I am the least known, I have the least going on, which is fine. I mean, it meant
Yeah.
that everybody that I was hanging out with actually liked me and enjoyed my company, and nobody needed me for anything.
Yeah.
But when you come here, you start to meet people who are on their journey, and it's just steps. It's not I'm better than anybody. It's just I've
Yep.
I'm 10 years in. I'm more than 10 years in now. That's why I have
Yeah.
stuff to show for it. But to see other people still trying to get over certain humps and realizing like, oh, I need to be more grateful for that because these are certain things that I don't trust me. Like there's really cool things that I still turn down on a regular basis because the excitement and the experience of it is gone. And it's been a really big challenging journey of just trying to reconnect with that 8-year-old, that 17-year-old, that were all the work was for nothing more than the work.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
all journey, no nothing else. So I think from that standpoint, it's a I appreciate you sharing that because I think yeah I didn't know you guys didn't like my singing. I don't care. My favorite rapper singing
It's not
is
that we don't like it. There's always room for improvement.
yeah, you guys
Just
aren't the first person to say that to me. It's yeah, no, and I completely
still
get that.
much better than mine, but
Yeah,
it's just so well in your rapping in your spoken word. And then we hear you singing, we're just like, ah. But for all the viewers out there, we make sure that you are grounded and you are just who you are in our
have I
family.
required getting grounded though? I asked this
Not
to
at
my
all.
friends. I've asked this to my
No.
friends too, because they always make those jokes too, right?
No, I would say you
They
don't. It's
validate they
yeah.
treat you know what they do is they'll just do mean things to me in the name of grounding me. And I'm like, why are
Because
you
it's
got
fun.
we got to
It's
keep
fun.
you in your place? I'm like, what did I do to make you guys think I need to be kept in my place? I
Yeah,
was
no,
like, trust me.
honestly, you haven't. I would expect you to have a little bit more bravado because if I was in your position, I would probably lose half the stuff that you've gotten just because I would have an ego. No, you're pretty zen, almost too zen. Right? I feel you should get a little bit more excited about all the cool stuff you've done, but you're like, yeah, okay, let's move on. Next thing.
You know what I think it is? The thing that actually excites me is when I'm around super creative thinkers.
Hmm.
Like that's the one where like you know I'll sell cigarettes to kids if it means I can be around if I can be around great thinkers. Like I'll do
Like
those
that
commercials.
trip
Like
you took. Like I think that was a really cool
yeah, the
trip
trip
you
to
took,
Italy.
right?
Yeah, yeah, and a couple of
Yeah.
those, and even now, like there's some really prophetic thinkers that I get to be around and have
Yeah.
conversations with, and it just fills me. And that and none of that's gonna make it on Instagram. And that's the
Yeah.
stuff that excites me. And also just the fact that like a lot of my friends, even when I went to Poland, a lot of those guys, I'm huge fans of them. And I listen to their podcast and consume their stuff religiously.
Yeah.
Um, and then I can text them and tell them how
Yeah.
much I just appreciated what they just did.
That's
They
cool.
love the fact that I listen. You know, it's
Yeah.
like you actually read my newsletter. I'm just like I'm legit a fan, and I don't have
Yeah.
to hide it. I don't have to like keep cool about it. I'm like I'm a legit,
Yeah.
you know, and of their music and stuff like that. So I'm super grateful for that. And I think from that standpoint, recognizing having good people, good family, all of
Yeah.
that is not common, and it's something that at the end of the day, that's all you're gonna have to show for it. And if we can create these situations for other people, I think that's gonna be really cool. Um, how do you want people to connect with you?
What do you mean? What do you mean by how do
Like,
you
do you
want
want people to
people?
follow you on social media? Do you want people to check out the website for the company? I can put this all in the notes. Normally, because I'm
Oh.
usually interviewing public figures, so they're always follow me
I
on
was like,
Instagram. I got, again, it's always been a
oh,
weird thing about, I don't ever tag you guys when I post you guys on Instagram because I don't know if you guys want that.
yeah.
But
I honestly have no idea because I've never been asked that question
okay, let's
ever.
give them the website for the company.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that'll be cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, just by saying hello. I don't know how to, yeah, that's a very your people kind of question, I guess.
Yeah, no, and again, for people looking for work, for people looking to hire,
Yeah,
for people that,
yeah,
this is especially in this pandemic age, you can work from anywhere. So
yeah.
if
And
you
just
have
even a
specific skills,
conversation, like as you said, just even if people don't know what they want for their companies, just a conversation of
yeah,
this is what we're kind of looking for. And then we kind of just throw it all together and say, do you mean this? And they're like, yeah.
yeah,
Um, Yeah, but this was fun. Thank you
no
for
problem.
having me. I'm very, very proud of you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
It,
very proud of you.
I'm talking about we put up these like rules of how what we have to do. I think for me for a long time and for no reason, I
Yeah,
told myself I need nobody in my family needs to support this for me to do it. For no reason. It wasn't like
yeah,
y'all ever said anything to
yeah,
me about it. And then those moments when you guys say nice things to me, and you and Nani have been super consistent with it since day one. There wasn't any, I didn't have to get you guys to buy in on it. But even when mom and dad, when they say nice things, they're just like, oh my God, that feels so much nicer. Why did I make this a rule that I didn't care?
yeah,
And it wasn't that I didn't care. I was afraid of you guys not caring. So I
yeah,
wouldn't, put that in front of you guys. And that's the interesting thing. And even telling people now, like it's easier to perform in front of 10,000 people than it is to be in a room full of your family and performing and showing
mm-hmm.
the faces. Even though that's how you start. You start with the family and friends for showing up.
Yeah,
So I appreciate that. I'm proud of you, dude. Like seriously, like
thank you.
we went through your list and you've been through some shit. And thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people are going to find value from not only hearing your stories and knowing that they've lived that, but also from like the specific tools that you've said and the ideas around that. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Well, it's good you asked me now. If you had asked me 10 years ago or 5 years ago, I'd have been like, I'm not sharing.
Mm,
I'm not. So it's a growth for me as well to
yeah.
when you asked me and you obviously caveated it saying if you're comfortable, and it wasn't even a question. I'm like, yeah, yeah, I'm proud of everything I've been through. Yeah, because everyone goes through stuff.
Yes. And that's why I appreciate you being the first
Everybody.
guest because this is the spirit I want people to share their stuff
Yes.
for other people to be, we learn about ourselves through the stories of others
Yes.
and we liberate ourselves by sharing our own. So I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Love you.
Love you. Thank you so much for rocking with us for the whole conversation. As you can see, my sister is just a special, special, special person. And I've been learning so much from her. And there's parts of this conversation even I didn't know were the case. And it definitely had an impact on me to hear those. Again, if you really dig this message, you dig this episode, share it with somebody you care about, send a link to somebody, show somebody how to follow us on the various podcast apps that exist. If you're on Apple Podcasts, if you're on Spotify, click follow, click subscribe, hit that rating, give us a rating, leave us a review. And as always, connect with me on a deeper level. Join my community of handsome friends at humblethepoet.com/community. Much love.